Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 339 and 340. I'm going to read these titles because Funimation. One unnatural phenomenon after the next, disembarking on Thriller Bark. And the man called a genius, Hogback, makes his appearance. In these episodes, we land on Thriller Bark, and it turns out to be just as haunted and weird as it looks. And there's also a doctor here who claims to just be, studying zombies, but I have my doubts about whether it's as innocent as it looks. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to the One Piece crew for commissioning this episode. MVPs, the One Piece crew. Appreciate you all a lot. So I know that I mentioned last week that I'm having to watch on Funimation again. And it's been a little bit tricky because, once again, their shit just does not want to work on regular televisions. And I watched this on my phone, which is not ideal. But I try to have a kind of rule about sitting at my desk on my main computer too much, because it gets tiring to be in front of the same computer all damn day. I think next time I will sit in front of the computer though, because it's a little bit easier to take in everything that's going on. Brian calls this Scooby Doo Island, and yes, that's pretty much what Thriller Bark feels like. It's really fun in that it feels kind of Halloween-y, and y'all know I'm a massive, massive fan of Halloween. It's a really close race between Halloween and Christmas. I feel like Halloween tends to win most of the time, but Christmas is... it depends on the year, really. So there's that aspect of it, which I really enjoy about this. But I also don't really know where we're heading with this at all. And I find it really weird that the friends who wind up on the island are the ones who have gone. I like it because you want people who are going to be scared. That's part of it, right? But also, I was like, we're going to have the three people who wanted the least. I wish we had some folks that maybe would be a little bit better at defending themselves, perhaps. But, that's always my wish. And I don't mean to underestimate our trio here, because they are capable in their way. It's just kind of... sometimes it's a matter of attitude more than ability. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, this this first of the two episodes... one unnatural phenomenon after the next. We begin still on the Sunny, and there is a moment where Nami is pointing out that this island isn't showing up on her log pose at all. And Brook has to explain that, this island isn't actually a regular island. It floated in. He says from the West Blue, I think. So it's not native, I suppose, if you want to say it like that. And it's not going to have the same effects on the log pose that other islands do. And this sort of opens up an interesting possibility, because how many other islands are going to be out there that can just pop up but not show on a log pose? Is this setting a precedent for this to happen a lot? Or is this just going to be the one time that this goes on? Part of me wants there to be a lot of surprises. And part of me is kind of I really hope that this doesn't get impossible for our friends to navigate, because there's so many interferences from West Blue. So, all right. Then Brook says something surprising here, that his wish has been granted. And he just jumps off the edge of the ship, and he says that he is doesn't want them to follow him, and that they should get out of here, escape this place, don't drop anchor. It was a pleasure meeting you all, and I won't forget your kindness so long as I live, but that's it. Bye-bye. Maybe we'll eventually meet again. And then he just jumps off the prow of the ship and runs along the top of the water, which everybody is very concerned, rightfully so, that he's going to sink because he's a devil fruit user. But I don't really get why. Like, he says a little bit earlier that he's able to jump really far because he doesn't have any flesh weighing him down. So I am assuming that he can run along the top of the water for like a similar reason. That he doesn't weigh as much. He's just bones. Do bones float? I don't think so, right? I think maybe old bones that the marrow and everything has dried out might float. But like, if I'm cooking something with bones in it, like making a chicken soup, those bones stay submerged. Those don't float. So I'm going to go ahead and say no. That said, the water that I'm using isn't as like full of salt as the ocean. Maybe there's a different buoyancy thing. It doesn't matter. All I'm saying is I was very surprised at this ability because it doesn't seem to like fall under any of the other umbrellas of things that we have seen from other people, except for the Iceman, who is able to ride his bicycle over an ice road that he makes for himself. So, of course, he gives them this warning. He runs off. And then Luffy turns to them all, and they're in the middle of talking about how they really need to heed this warning. And Luffy says, you guys say something, and it becomes clear he is super interested in going to this island. And, of course, we've got everybody sort of like split on this. We have Usopp and Chopper, who are both like, no, we definitely need to get the fuck out of here. And then we've got like Robin, who's thinking this seems kind of interesting. I don't know. I'd be like down to check it out. And she's also the one that is like realizing that we were likely lured into a ring wall. She says, I think the walls extend all the way around this island. So we were pulled in, and then the gate closed, and we are trapped inside. And it's a weird image when we back up and they show us sort of overhead view. The walls around the island are being held in place by giant chains. So the wall, despite the fact that, you know, this island floats, the walls don't like go all the way to the seabed or anything, but they don't have to because they're on a ship. They can't like go underneath it. That'd be cool though, if that were like a feature that Frankie had built in. You know, we need the being able to fly away does seem more practical in a general way. But if you were able to manage to make the Sunny a submarine for just short stretches of time, I feel like our friends could get quite a bit of use from that. Have we seen a submarine in this universe? Is that a thing that exists? I feel like that came up at one point, and I can't really remember anything specific. So anyone listening, let me know. This is the first time that I have done a One Piece. Brian was here and just had to say goodbye. I don't think I've ever done a One Piece where I had nobody in the audience. And currently, after Brian has taken his leave, there's nobody here to answer my questions. So I'm just flying by the seat of my pants here, and I'm going to have to wait and get the answers later on. And I'm not used to that. I've been really spoiled. So I just wanted to let anybody who's listening know, why isn't anybody telling her? It's because nobody's here. Everybody's got to work. Everybody has jobs and children, and not me. I got One Piece. Well, I guess this is my job. It's pretty cool, huh? So the trap, it's unclear exactly why they are being trapped at all. You know, Nami asks this question: if they're trying to capture sailors on purpose, what are they wanting to do with them? And I mean, that's the question, right? I don't want to know in a lot of ways. That feels like something that has no answer that I'm excited about. But the everything that I kind of think about here is just, there's no good answer, especially because there's like essentially what seems to me a mad doctor, right? A mad scientist doctor on the land. I think I don't know, this feels bad. So Luffy tells Usopp, Nami, and Chopper to watch the ship, and the rest of them are going to head out to the island and check the place out. And Usopp gets kind of frustrated with Luffy and is like, dude, I get that you want to go on adventures and check things out, but you're not being responsible about this. And Luffy interrupts and is like, look, I do want to check it out. I would like a ghost as a pet. And he demonstrates with a little, he's got a little net and a little box that he intends to put it in like a butterfly, which I was inclined to sort of laugh about. And then I sort of stopped and was like, I don't know how ghosts work in this universe. That may work. I don't think so, based on the fact that we did see a ghost come right through a wall. So I'm going to assume that this butterfly box isn't, made of anything that is going to keep a ghost in, that it'll be able to seep right out of it. Probably won't be caught by a net either. But who knows? Maybe there is something to this and it will wind up doing something. And honestly, I would find that kind of amusing. So Luffy explains that, but then he's like, the thing is, Brook is part of our crew now, and so I have to go get him. To which Usopp, this is a thing on this show because they have to kind of remind us of stuff, I think. Usopp is shocked at the fact that Brook is seen as part of the crew because he didn't agree on that. Which we have already had this conversation, Usopp. So I don't know why you're acting surprised by it. But he says something about how if there's like an animated skeleton on the ship, he won't be able to sleep at night. And the thing for me that bums me out is Usopp. Brook is so adorable and so sweet. What about him? Like, I get the principle of he's an animated skeleton, and sure. But stop a minute and like think about this dude's attitude. Does he really seem like he's any sort of genuine threat? Come on, man. Yeah, he's strong. Yeah, he shouldn't be alive. But I feel like he's got a sort of jolliness that Usopp should appreciate more. And I wish he could just get past his bigotry about the exterior package and see Brook for the delight that he is on the inside. Anyway, okay. So then we had this moment with Robin telling, let's see, Luffy, Frankie, it's up to you to take care of Robin while I watch the boat, is what Sanji says, because she has lunch boxes. And Frankie says that he is excited about this island and Robin wants to go because she thinks it sounds exciting. And Frankie then tells them we need a smaller boat to get close to shore. And I have created something kind of cool to do that I have kept a surprise called Channel 2. And then describes the system has 6 channels. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And each dock has its own set of capabilities. The zeros are for paddling. And 1 and 3 are, there's a mention later on of specifically what they are. One of them is like the wave rider, the waver. And the other one, I think, well, no, the paddling one is the one, I don't remember, but he mentions it later. And when Usopp's like, I thought you said 4 was empty, he says, I just told you that so that I could surprise you later. And he lifts the doorway to Channel 3. No, is it? Channel 2. Right. And it turns out it's a mini Going Merry. It's adorable, you guys. It's like got apparently a steam-powered engine. And he calls it the Mini Merry 2. And our friends Usopp, Nami, and Chopper don't seem to be fully thinking through the fact that they are heading to the island they've claimed to be so afraid of. So they just head out while Nami excitedly spins the wheel, and they are acting as if it's just a pleasure trip, and they don't really fully think through where they're heading. So as they're heading to the island, all of a sudden, this giant wave pops up. And Nami says, don't worry, I got this, and heads straight for it as Usopp and Chopper kind of freak out. And the boat goes right up to the top of the wave and shoots over it, and it's this sort of magnificent moment. But again, she's so distracted at what she's doing, like just as a fun outing, that she's not considering the fact that this is taking her to the island. And meanwhile, Luffy is getting really frustrated because he is watching them have all this fun and he isn't getting to ride the boat. So let's see, channels 1 and 3, now you've seen it all. Channel 0, support paddle. Channel 1, single seat waver, the white hobby horse. Channel 3, a triple-seater scouting submarine. When have we seen that? I've got to assume that was during the filler episodes, because I don't remember that, having just mentioned that there's no submarine. I genuinely... unless I missed something. So that's got to be the filler episodes, right? Which actually I had meant to go back and watch and I haven't yet. I'll try and do that this week. And then 4, of course, is the Mini Merry 2, or Channel 2, I guess it is. And then for now, at least, those are all the features. And I'm like, yeah, you said there were 6 channels though. And you lied about the fact that one of them was empty. So you've definitely got 2 more things up your sleeve. And I'm really excited to see what those are. And since we've already got a submarine, I can't hazard a guess as to what those are. But yeah, so Nami finally realizes her mistake and starts screaming. And Sanji from the deck is just like, hey, is everything okay? But it is really, really foggy and they're far away and they can't see what's going on. So they just basically have to sit there and wait for their friends to come back. And this was just all so poorly thought out. I mean, honestly, not well done, everybody. Robin says something about how maybe they fell victim to a curse from that ghost. And Zoro surprisingly says, not funny, Robin, in a very serious way. I thought his response was going to be like, ghosts don't exist or don't be silly, but he takes it like very seriously and is sort of behaving like she's by just saying that out loud, she's sort of meddling with forces she doesn't understand, kind of thing. And after she says this, we get a series of odd moments of things moving around on the ship by themselves. We have the anchor beginning to drop, which it should not do by itself, because that would only happen if the gears got loose, which is something that occurs if a ship gets older and things need repair, but this is brand new, so it shouldn't happen. Then we've got a hatch opening in the deck that sort of leads below deck. We have like a door open and close, and all of them are sort of looking around like, did you do that? And nobody has touched a thing. And even at one point, this cracked me up. I thought it was just like, him doing something weird, which is also what I guess Sanji thought. But Luffy's face just stretches out sideways. And Sanji thinks that he's being goofy. And Luffy's like, it's not me. I swear I'm not doing this. And as he says that, whatever had hold of his face just lets go and his face snaps back into place. And then a sword lifts up out of one of Zoro's sheaths and flies through the air and tries to stab Luffy in the heart. Because he's flat out on the deck of the ship at this point. It's a bad scene, and none of them are talking about this being a ghost, even though to me it seems pretty clear there is. And Robin hears something that she describes as like the growl of a beast, and Zoro says, well, if none of us did it, then there's an enemy on this ship. I mean, okay, it tried to stab Luffy, so I suppose enemy certainly is one of the things you could say about it. But for me, enemy describes a human being. That sounds like a regular person that is out to get you. And all of this stuff happens in front of their eyes with no discernible force wielding it. So it's not until Frankie is the one who says something about how it has to be a ghost. And nobody really answers the suggestion. Nobody says, yeah, it is, or no, it's not. The only thing, this is so funny to me. Sanji responds with it doesn't matter what's on the ship. I'm going to go and help Nami. And he leaps off of the boat in spectacular fashion. But as he is making his leap, something grabs him by the ankle. This is the impression I get. He flops forward and smashes his face into the side of the ship. And then whatever it is lifts him up and whips him around like it's the Hulk and he's Loki. And he's just being flapped back and forth. So everybody takes this as whatever creature is here. We can't see it, which means that we can't defend ourselves against it. And it also doesn't want us to leave the ship. So I guess we're staying here. And then they hear this noise. And they look up. And Robin has her hands pressed against something invisible. She says, something is grabbing me. And there's a sort of licking sound, and you see this slurp go up her chest to her face, like something licked her from her cleavage to the top of her head. Which, I ask you, are we ever going to get a creature that isn't into the human women that it sees? I really just want to lodge a complaint, an official complaint on this. It is tiresome. Genuinely, at this point, can we just not? And it has to lick her. Really? Ugh, I hate this so much. So anyway, they are noticing that the waves inside the wall that they're sort of imprisoned in are starting to get a lot choppier. Again, nobody knows what's happening. It seems as if they're being pushed further away from the island and toward the wall, but they don't, like, there's no ground. So because this is a floating island, they can't really drop anchor because there's nothing for the anchor to fall and hold them to. And meanwhile, of course, our friends who are on the island, they're growing further and further away from them. And I think this is about all we see of the people aboard the Sunny for the rest of these 2 episodes. And then from here on, we are just with Usopp, Nami, and Chopper. So they didn't intend to, but they are at the wall of this island here, genuinely surprised that they wound up on the walls are like 6 or 7 meters high. So yeah, it's a bit of an intimidating moment because they're sort of penned in on either side by these walls, and there's a ton of skeletons that they have landed on. And again, reminder that they were the only ones who really didn't want to be here. This all feels very unfair. So what Nami is saying is that there's a bit of a diagram, for lack of a better word. Usopp is looking up at the water that seems to be like above their heads and is like, how did we get down here? And she says the wall up there is the edge of the island. So when we ran into it, we were all thrown off the boat, and then we landed in this moat. So I don't know if they're going to be able... I mean, they're clearly, of course, they're going to get the Mini Mary back, but I don't know how they do that, because they're going to have to cross this empty moat again or find their way. It just feels like that's an inconvenient place for the boat to wind up. And Nami says, like, yeah, sorry guys, it's my bad, but I'm cute, so you'll forgive me, right? And I was like, girl. So she says, from the looks of things, this moat is some kind of trap. If you think of it that way, it's lucky that we didn't fall on giant spears or spikes. And then Chopper is like, oh, yeah, you're right. It's lucky that we had all of these skeletons to break our fall before it really registers what he's saying. And then, of course, him and Usopp begin to freak out. And they consider just sort of waiting in place for Luffy to come and find them. But they are below sea level. It will be difficult for them to be spotted. He may not understand the setup of everything. So they're kind of wandering around like, what should we do? And then they notice these eyes that are glowing. We've got 3 sets of eyes. 2 of them are pairs. And then there's one eye that is by its lonesome. And when the lights come up, it's a 3-headed dog, and one of its heads, the eye has a bandage over it. And we find out later that this head is also not a dog like the other 2. It is a fox. And for whatever reason, it is kind of self-conscious about that. And you see the stitching of these 3 animals stitched together. Like, this is not a naturally occurring creature. This is a creature that was created somehow. And, you know, it's supposed to be a guard to the underworld. I have to assume that our weirdo doctor is the one who managed this somehow. It's part of the means of guarding this place, I would guess. I don't know. But overall, this doctor thing is highly sus to me. So I'm really just waiting for the shoe to drop on that. It hasn't happened by the end of these 2 episodes, but I feel like it's gotta. I do appreciate too that it's Chopper who notices that one of the heads sounds different, and he's the one who calls it out about being a fox. And Cerberus sort of stops and is like, "Oh, I can't believe he noticed." "Aw, don't be self-conscious, buddy." I think, yeah, it's Usopp who says, I think it's depressed, because it stops dead after Chopper says that for just a moment. So yeah, they get chased for quite a while, and they find, finally, at the end of this, a set of stairs. Really, really high, steep, many stairs. They mount these no trouble, but I would have been dead by the time I reached the top. I'm not sure I would have reached the top. I probably would have gotten eaten by this dog. And they sort of think that if they reach the top, that this dog is going to stop following them. That does not happen. It's continuing to chase after them, and Usopp has to fire a one of those like smoke bombs at it, which does confuse it enough that it just sort of loses them. It doesn't stop it, but it's like disoriented and goes in a few different directions and can't seem to tell exactly which way our friends have gone. So the camera pans up and we see them watching Cerberus from up in a tree where they have managed to go and hide. And Usopp comments on the fact that you would think, since it's a dog, that it would be able to smell that they are up there, and it doesn't. And I think that's a really interesting point. Like, I'm going to assume that that is partially to explain why they're able to get away from it, but also I'm wondering if there is something about the way this animal is put together that causes some of its senses to be like less on point than normal. And if we're going to find out about that, I don't know. They get interrupted here by the arrival of what he calls himself Hilden. Hilden looks like Count Chocula. If, like, an off-brand Count Chocula. You know, he looks like the Dracula mascot for a cereal or a theme park or just something that's, like, meant for kids, and he has to be, like, sort of spooky. But he also is, like, very non-threatening looking because he's very round and has big round eyes, and like, yeah, he's got sharp teeth, but they're not like sharp teeth in a way that make you feel worried. They're sharp teeth in a way that it's just a little signal that, yeah, he's probably a vampire, but you don't feel like there's no slavering quality to him. You can't see each distinct tooth in a way that feels like you need to be worried about it. It's all just part of the same ridge of teeth in a very, very cartoony way. So it's an odd thing where I'm just like, what are you? And also, I'm not concerned about him, even though he does feel like vaguely threatening. He's so sort of sweet looking for a vampire. And he has the number 21 tattooed on his forehead, and there is a stitch mark around his nose and like up his forehead. So again, this looks like a creature that was created, not somebody who is a naturally occurring being. And he says that he was spying on all of them and is going to help them out, because they obviously got very scared by that dog. And he says, the night's only just begun, but the shadows in the forests are already growing deep. And if you wait much longer, it's going to become a place worse than your worst nightmares. So you should come with me and take a ride in my carriage. And the carriage that we see is the type, like, it's basically like a hearse carriage This would be the type of carriage that they would put a coffin in to take it to a funeral. It's really something. It's all like purples and mauves. And he says, I'll take you to the mansion. And mentions that Dr. Hogback lives there. And this is what gets Chopper really excited. He, at first, looks really scared. And it throws you off. Because it sounds as if the way he's reacting is like, oh my God, dread Dr. Hogback. We don't want to run into him. But then we find out that Dr. Hogback is a famous doctor that everybody is like, anybody who is a doctor has heard his name, and that he is rumored to have saved more lives than there are stars in the sky. And later on, we find out that he basically like disappeared off the face of the earth and nobody knew what happened to him. And some people thought that he had been like kidnapped. Other people thought he had died or run away. And eventually everybody just sort of gave up on ever hearing anything about him again because so much time passed and they, you know, his name never came up. So, oh, Seraphim's in the chat. Hey, Seraphim, I didn't even see you. Sorry, I've been looking at the other screen. Okay, I'm not going to be able to not see him as off-brand Count Chocula now. Thanks for that. That's what I'm here for. That's my role. Plant things in people's heads that they can never shake again. So we jump to the next episode, and the carriage has like these blue spectral flames sort of hovering over it that look really, really cool. And the horses that are pulling the carriage, they're not regular horses. So we've got two. We have one that looks like a centaur, but the like human part is skeletal. Also in a top hat, and I don't know what it is about this illustrator feeling the need to add a top hat when somebody is a skeleton, but I fully support it, understand it in a sort of like instinctual way, and hope that continues. And then the other one's carrying a standard, because like the I should mention, I don't know why, but I will mention the centaur skeleton one. He is kind of looking cranky. He's got his arms crossed. He has a long scarf that's sort of like fluttering out behind him in addition to his little top hat. The other one, it's a being that is riding something that looks much more dog-like than horse-like. With a dog with like goofy, roly-poly eyes that like the pupils are going in different directions, a tongue sticking out. The being riding him is cloaked and you don't see his eyes really. It's just like this, it's perched on his back in such a way that it looks really, really small, like child size. Oh, I lie. You do wind up seeing his eyes. I forgot, because one eye is wide open and the other seems to be sort of half shut. And he is the one that's carrying the standard that has the skull on the background of like all of these blue flames. So as they're riding in this carriage, I don't understand why they're doing this, but Hilton is like, why don't you guys have a drink to calm your nerves? And he pours a glass of wine for Nami. And I'm like, guys, I don't know why I need to tell you not to accept a drink from this weirdo creature that you don't know what it is, but it's clearly not a regular human, in a strange place that feels very threatening. But apparently I do have to tell you, Nami, because she just fucking takes this glass. And I'm like, girl, what is wrong with you? Come on. on the way as well, this is when we talk about Dr. Hogback. What is his name? And the imagery that we get of him, it doesn't, the thing that's sort of funny here, when Chopper is talking about him, we get some animation that is meant to be an illustration of what Chopper is imagining in his head when he thinks about this doctor, right? And he's talking about how the whole medical community looks upon him, Hogback, as a true hero. But the animation is showing us the silhouette of a madman holding up a knife and spoon with pointed claw-like fingers and glowing eyes that I just don't think that's the image that comes to my mind when I'm thinking about a medical hero. It just feels incongruous. That's all I'm saying. So Chopper's talking about him with excitement and admiration, looking forward to meeting him. But that image for me is the exact kind of person that I feel Chopper would not be interested in meeting. And as they draw closer to the building, he's like, finally clears up, like, that's the Dr. Hogback you mean, right? And I was like, okay, I'm glad you even specifically asked, because who knows, maybe it's like a different person. And Hilden assures him, yes, that's the correct one, and that he is like making breakthroughs in medicine and whatnot. And Nami is looking out the window of the carriage as they're talking, and she sees this weird lion, and it turns to look at her, and it's got a human face. And again, there are stitch marks. It's not human all over its face. It's human from like the bridge of the nose downward. So its eyes look like it had probably been regular human eyes. And now it's got a human nose and mouth and a chin with like beard stubble. But the rest of it, like the coloring on it from the nose up, looks like a normal lion perhaps would look. So what I'm getting is a Island of Dr. Moreau sort of situation here. You know, it's interesting because like the Cerberus, there were two different types of animals sewn together, but they were both animals. This dude, that Hilden that's in the carriage with them, he looks really weird and has obviously been stitched together, but he is still like, looks like all of his parts originally were human. All of this is looking like that seems, there could be a lot of reasons for it, you know. But then we see this lion, and then I start to think about this like centaur guy, and I'm like, you know, if we assume centaurs are naturally occurring beings in this universe, then that's one thing. But what if they're not? And what if this guy was just sewn to a horse? And Nami tries to draw what the lion looked like for Usopp, who calls her a liar. And then he pulls back the curtain on their carriage and they look outside, and there are all of these fucking weird creatures just like dancing around with their mouths open and their tongues lolling out. And then they're gone. After they stop and rub their eyes, and they're gone. All three of them sort of start laughing like, oh, I'm so silly for getting so scared. They're gone. It was clearly our imagination. But it seems as if they see something again when they open their eyes. And as the carriage like flies past, we see one of the, like, there had been an actual ghost and a tree that had a face on it standing there still. And I can't tell whether they rubbed their eyes, everything looked like it disappeared, and then they saw it again after all. It felt like that was what happened, but I wasn't totally sure. So this is when Nami tries to put her foot down and says, Hilden, you have got to turn this carriage around. This is really flipping us out. And when he's like, what could have upset you so much? Usopp is like, dude, this whole place is super weird. Like, you gotta know that. And he says, well, it is strange. I'm not going to try and argue with you about the fact that the forest is a weird place, but it's not anything that you need to, like, worry about. You're in the carriage with us. It's fine. So at this point, when Chopper realizes how determined Nami and Usopp are to turn around, he starts to get really upset because he really wants to meet Dr. Hogback. And Usopp has to be like, do you want to die or do you want to meet Dr. Hogback? Well, I guess it's, do you want to die and meet Dr. Hogback, or do you want to get out of here and live? And Hilden tries to tell them, we're going to have the driver turn around and bring you back. Everything will be fine. He hops out of the carriage, and he has, by the way, a giant bottle, like, strapped to his back. I was going to suggest that was what made Nami see something weird, was that there was, like, a hallucinogenic quality to the liquid. But because she's the only one who drank it, and both of them, Usopp and Chopper, seem to also have seen the weird stuff out the window, I think maybe that's not it after all. So a moment goes by, our friends are sitting alone looking at each other, and they start to wonder what's taking so long. And when Usopp sticks his head out the window, he realizes the carriage is parked in a graveyard and Hilden is nowhere to be seen. And as they are standing there like, what's going on? All of a sudden, some hands begin to punch their way through the ground as zombie creatures begin to arise from their graves. It's a pretty, like, I can't be mad at this. You know, this is a classic. We have zombies rising from a graveyard. This is good shit. And, like, it's, well, like, the animation, the hands are coming at you in such a way that when we go back to Nami and Chopper, the light is coming up from below their faces to make them look spookier. Then the zombie actually comes out of its grave and it's got glowing red eyes. I mean, he has raggedy clothing hanging off of his body. And we see, as soon as this one comes up, the camera sort of pulls out, comes back, and then we see that there's like 30 of these, 40 of these, heading straight for the carriage, which it appears does not have anything pulling it anymore. I guess that the dudes pulling it made their escape and bounced along with Hilden, who we see Hilden flying at one point. Apparently that, like, cape turns into wings, or what looks like a cape is actually wings, unclear. But yeah, they have gotten out of this situation and left these three to their fate. The zombies begin to overturn the carriage. And so our friends have to make their way on foot. And I really enjoy this moment. So first, Usopp gets grabbed by some of them. He is talking about how he got bitten, so he's a zombie now, or he's going to become a zombie now. I am assuming that's not how it works in this universe, just because he specifically mentions that he read how it works that way in a book. So I feel like that's just a sort of lampshade, the fact that that's normally what happens, but isn't what's going to happen with him. I am thinking that all of these zombies were made by Hogback. I do love that one of the zombies, when Chopper comes at him, he knocks his head off, and one of the other zombies catches his head and tosses it back, and he's like, oh, thanks. So Chopper saves Usopp, and then Usopp has to come in and save Nami. He uses fire because the zombies don't like it. And in the dub, you guys, the zombies, oh my god, it's fire. Ow, that's really hot. What are you doing? That's really dangerous. It's very funny. This was super unexpected, and I really liked it. Anytime that you suddenly have beings that are acting like classic creatures suddenly become very human, it's always amusing. So Usopp says something specific about how they shamble really slowly so we don't have to worry about them catching us. And then all of a sudden they say something like turbo shamble and begin to shamble really fast, which gets our friends worried for a moment until it's clear they can only sustain that for so long. And then they turn around and all of them have slowed back down again because they are very tired. This was very funny. I really, really like the concept that zombies have turbo shamble, though. I hope that comes up again. I'm into it. So our friends get away and they run to the castle. And, I had said that was the last time that we saw our friends on the Sunny, but I forgot about that, like, giant, weird, spider web that they sort of, like, sail into, basically. But back to Nami and Usopp, they get to the castle where Hogback is living, supposedly. And they are outside it. There's a gate that, like, opens by itself. They come into the courtyard, and there is a weird well chilling there. And a spotlight, focuses on the well, and this weird girl arises from it and says welcome, but also isn't welcoming at all to Usopp. And I'm thinking that might be because he got bitten, but I'm not positive. And she starts to chuck plates at him. She comes prepared. She's got a stack of these plates and just begins to launch them at him, and she counts them as she does it. It's a real weird attack choice. And she tries to say he's not allowed to enter, but then Hogback comes out and is like, no, yeah, it's fine. Of course he can enter the mansion. And he explains, Hogback does, that she was left by her fiance after they got in a fight. She tried to test him. It's such a weird thing. Her name is Sindri, as he says. She was once engaged to a wealthy man, but to test his love, she shattered 10 plates from his cherished dining set. Sadly, he then called off the engagement and sent her out of his home in disgrace. She has become my personal servant with a boundless plate grudge. I genuinely don't know what to make of this at all. She's got giant boobs. She has all of the weird stitching marks on her that the others have had. She's wearing a pendant that, for me, gives off the take this pendant off and her life drains away and she becomes an inanimate corpse kind of thing. And I don't know that that's how that works, but it's just the vibe. And he is weirdly afraid of her. He tries to tell her, because she continues to throw a plate at Usopp when he says Usopp is certainly still welcome. And when he says that, the lighting changes. She stares at him. He begins to shake and sweat. And there's a real sense of actually she's the one who sort of runs things around here. So, of course, Chopper, who is very excited to meet his hero, isn't really seeing the weirdness of the situation. and is falling all over himself with excitement to get this guy's autograph. Hogback calls him Dr. Chopper, and of course that's the way to Chopper's heart, so that works immediately. And he invites them inside. Sindri tells them that like they're really dirty, so they should probably take a bath after their meal. But yeah, what he explains is that everything weird on this island, people who come back to life, that this is the dream of all doctors. Everyone in this world has a loved one they'd like to see come back to life. That's human nature. And yet the medical community condemns it. They say I'm trying to play God. That's why I disappeared from society, so I could continue my research without interruption. And again, Chopper is just thinking, yeah, this is great. You're going to help people all over the world. And he's not considering how this sounds like it's straight up necromancy. Like, probably those zombies out there, sir, are some of his failed experiments. Like, the way that this doctor is sort of trying to frame it sounds to me like he's saying, I stumbled across this island where weird things happen, and I decided to stay and find out how it worked. And I feel like it's probably more, I found this weird island where I could make all of these weird abominations and nobody would be able to check me. And so this also would answer the question of, why is there a weird gate that lures you in and then closes behind you? I'm assuming it's so that people can do weird experiments. Well, so that he can do weird experiments on people. I'm not excited about seeing that. But again, Chopper just isn't really like picking up the context clues here. He asks to see his lab and research. And he, oh man, Hogback does not care for that. And yells at him that nobody, I mean nobody, gets inside my lab. At this point, Sindri shows up, and she drops the flans that they're having for dessert directly onto the table because she hates plates so much that she simply won't use them. And all of them just decide to eat directly off of the table with their like heads down like dogs. It's a very weird... This plate grudge is weird. The way it manifests is weird. Everything about this is so strange. So Usopp then asks Dr. Hogback whether he has seen a skeleton running around the island. Usopp describes him as like somebody who's in a really good mood considering they're dead. And the way that Dr. Hogback reacts, he sort of pauses and freezes in place. He starts to sweat, and we get a flashback of him being held at like sword point by Brook. It's an odd thing. He says, I've never seen him. Usopp says, all right, it's no big deal. And he turns and looks, I think, at Chopper and says, is it him? I don't think so. It couldn't be. And that's the end of the episode. And I don't know. I think he was looking at Chopper, or maybe he's thinking, is it him? Like, is the guy that I saw the one that Usopp's looking for? I'm not sure what it is that's going on, but obviously there is some significance, and I'm hoping that, like, because the fact is, when they saw this island, the way Brook reacted was like, oh, I found my heart's desire. And he like jumps off of their ship immediately and goes to land. Does he want to find this doctor, or like, what is it? What is he after here? Because clearly he had an idea of what he wanted. So I don't know what's going on, but yeah, so this is fun so far. Good sort of mounting tension. I like these episodes a lot. Okay, I'm going to wrap up, and I'm really going to try and watch the filler episodes between now and the next episode of coverage. So I'll keep you apprised on whether I'm able to do that. Funimation is not making things easy, but I'm going to do my best. I appreciate all of you so much, the One Piece crew, for commissioning this. And thank you to Brian and Seraphim for hanging out in the chat. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.